Saqqara, the city of the dead and the cradle of Egypt's first kings. For nearly 5,000 years, its sands have guarded secrets beyond imagination. We thought the story was complete, until now. Just days ago, archaeologists unsealed a tomb hidden for millennia. Untouched, silent, waiting to speak again. Inside lies a chamber filled with coffins, artifacts, and mysteries. What story does this tomb tell? And whose name will emerge from the shadows of history? Tonight, we enter Saqqara's new secret. Saqqara, a place where time itself lies buried beneath the sands. Here, on the desert plateau just south of Cairo, the first kings of Egypt built their eternal resting place. Towering above it all stands the Step Pyramid of Djoser, the oldest stone pyramid in the world. A monument that has watched the desert winds for nearly 5 millennia. For centuries, archaeologists have walked these sands. They have mapped temples, unsealed tombs, and uncovered mummies wrapped in stories older than history itself. We believed the sands had yielded most of their secrets. We thought Saqqara had finally spoken all it could. But just days ago, the desert reminded us how wrong we were. In an announcement that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities confirmed the unsealing of a new tomb. A shaft cut deep into the limestone plateau led explorers to a chamber untouched for thousands of years. The shaft itself was narrow, carved vertically into the ground, a silent pathway descending into darkness. At the bottom, archaeologists stood before a sealed doorway. Its limestone blocks bore faint chisel marks from craftsmen long forgotten. Sand had pressed against its surface for millennia, locking away what lay inside. And then, in a moment heavy with silence, they began to break the seal. Imagine that room. For over 3,000 years, no light, no sound, no breath had disturbed it. And suddenly, in a single instant, the modern world touched it again. The stone shifted, dust fell into the torchlight, and history itself seemed to exhale. The archaeologists waited. No one spoke. Then, with cautious hands, they lifted the final block. And what they saw was something extraordinary. A burial chamber filled with coffins painted in vivid colors that had not faded. Wooden sarcophagi stacked and arranged as if their owners had only just been laid to rest. Ushabti figurines still standing ready, guardians of eternity. The air was thick with the weight of time. Some present described a sensation of stepping into another world. A silence so deep it felt sacred, as though the voices of the dead still lingered in the painted walls. This was not a discovery planned for tourists or staged for spectacle. It was raw, intimate, and profoundly human. A sealed chamber that had survived centuries of shifting sands, grave robbers, and decay, now standing open once more. The official report remains cautious. Scholars are still cataloging the finds, carefully recording every symbol, every artifact. Yet the very act of opening this tomb has already reshaped our understanding. It reminds us that Saqqara is not a closed book, but a living library with chapters still waiting to be read. And so the story begins. We stand at the threshold of a secret untouched for millennia. A tomb sealed since the age of pharaohs, now revealed in our own time. What lies within will change the way we see Egypt's ancient world. And this is only the beginning. When the sealed doorway finally gave way, the archaeologists lowered their lanterns and cameras into the chamber beyond. What appeared before them was more than a room. It was a story frozen in time. The burial chamber was rectangular, cut into limestone with remarkable precision. The walls still held their shape after centuries, their surface smooth but bearing faint traces of tool marks. Sand had drifted in through tiny cracks, but the chamber itself appeared astonishingly intact. No gaping holes, no signs of large-scale looting, as if the desert had guarded this space jealously. At the center of the chamber stood the treasures that immediately drew every gaze. The coffins. There were several, each placed with care, some stacked, others laid side by side. Their arrangement suggested a family tomb or a collective burial, though the meaning is still debated. Most were made of wood, the grains still visible beneath layers of pigment. Despite the centuries, their painted surfaces glowed with colors that had survived the dark. Vivid blues, deep reds, and a gold-like sheen catching the lantern light. The wood itself had dried and cracked, but the artistry had endured. On their surfaces, painted gods and hieroglyphs told silent stories. Anubis, the jackal-headed protector, guided the souls of the dead. Isis, with her outstretched wings, promised rebirth. Osiris, lord of the afterlife, stood enthroned as judge and guardian. Hieroglyphic texts wound across the coffins in flowing lines, spelling prayers for safe passage and eternal protection. Even now, whispered one archaeologist, these coffins are still speaking. And indeed, the colors seemed alive, as though the artists had just laid down their brushes. Not all coffins were identical. Some were more ornate, their faces carefully carved and painted in lifelike detail. The eyes inlaid with black and white pigment seemed to look back at those who gazed into them. Others were plainer, perhaps belonging to attendants or family members of lower status. Together they created a tapestry of social order encapsulated in wood and paint. The vividness struck everyone in the room. It was as if 3,000 years had passed in a single blink, and these people had been waiting all this time to be seen again. But the coffins were not alone. Around them lay an assortment of artifacts, each one more than decoration, each one a key to belief. Dozens of small figurines stood in neat rows of ushabti servants. They were carved in stone, faience, and sometimes painted wood. Each one bore the likeness of a worker holding tiny tools. Their role was clear, to spring to life in the afterlife, performing tasks on behalf of the deceased. They were not statues, but promises of eternal service. Nearby stood ceramic vessels, some with lids still intact. These jars once held offerings, grains, wine, oils, sustenance for eternity. A few had hieroglyphs painted on their sides, perhaps identifying their contents or dedicating them in the name of a deity. Beside them lay amulets in the shape of scarabs, eyes, and ankhs, tokens of power, rebirth, and divine protection. Their placement was deliberate, arranged with ritual care to surround the dead with layers of spiritual armor. And then, something even rarer emerged from the dust. Fragments of papyri. Though fragile and darkened with age, their fibers still clung together. Some carried visible lines of hieratic script, hurried strokes of ink that may preserve prayers or funerary texts. Others bore faint illustrations, perhaps depictions of deities or instructions for rituals. For archaeologists, these were among the most precious finds. For papyrus, unlike stone or ceramic, was a voice made of reeds and ink, a voice never meant to survive so long. Its survival here was nothing short of miraculous. The chamber also bore signs of careful ritual. Amulets had been placed in corners as though guarding the four directions. A small wooden box lay sealed, its contents still unknown until conservators can examine it. There were traces of resin and incense on the floor, hardened droplets from rituals performed at the time of burial. Even the arrangement of objects seemed to echo a cosmic order reflecting how Egyptians viewed the universe itself. The archaeologists moved cautiously, their tools brushing away layers of dust millimeter by millimeter. Every object was photographed, measured, and recorded before it could be touched. Each coffin was treated as both an artifact and a sacred vessel, never approached without respect. The air was heavy not only with ancient dust, but also with the awareness that each decision could preserve or destroy a piece of history. And so, the first look into the tomb was not merely an inventory. It was an act of listening. Listening to what the coffins, the figurines, the papyri, and the amulets were trying to say across centuries. Each artifact was not silent. Each had a voice, a role, a story. Together they painted a picture of life and death in ancient Egypt, of a people whose greatest fear was not mortality, but the possibility of being forgotten. For the modern world, this chamber is not just a discovery, it is a time capsule, a room where faith, art, and memory have remained intact long after the civilization that created them faded away. To step into this space is to step into the minds of those who lived and died nearly 3,000 years ago. And the longer one looks, the clearer the message becomes. These were not objects from museums. They were companions for eternity. And so, what lies within is more than wood and paint, stone and clay. It is a reminder that ancient Egypt was not a world of distant gods and pharaohs only, but of families, artisans, and faith that reached beyond the grave. The coffins are not silent. The figurines are not still. The amulets are not cold. They are waiting for us to understand, waiting for us to remember. The first glimpse of the chamber revealed beauty and mystery, but the true challenge lay in understanding what all of this meant. Whose tomb was this? And to what era did it belong? Archaeologists began with the most reliable clue available: art and style. In Egyptian history, design was not arbitrary. Every coffin, every brush stroke, every hieroglyph was shaped by time and tradition. By comparing these patterns, experts could place the tomb within a specific dynasty. The coffins here, though wooden, bore elaborate painted surfaces with vibrant colors still intact. The faces were finely modeled, with inlaid eyes and careful outlines. The iconography emphasized gods like Osiris, Isis, and Anubis, rendered in styles that seemed to belong to the later New Kingdom. During the Old Kingdom, coffins were plainer, often box-like, with minimal decoration. The Middle Kingdom added inscriptions and some ornamentation. But only in the New Kingdom did coffins become true masterpieces of paint and symbolism. The hieroglyphic script also provided critical hints. The form of the signs, their curves and flourishes, reflected the handwriting of a particular age. Scripts evolved just as languages do. Here, the hieroglyphs were elegant, flowing, but still compact, again pointing toward the New Kingdom, perhaps around the 19th dynasty. Even pigments told a story. The vivid blue derived from ground azurite and the bright yellows made from orpiment were hallmarks of later workshops in Thebes. Chemical analysis confirmed the use of recipes that became common after 1300 BCE. From art, script, and pigment, the evidence converged. This was not an Old Kingdom official of the Pyramid Age, nor was it a Middle Kingdom noble. It was someone who had lived during the power and splendor of the New Kingdom, the golden age of empire of pharaohs like Ramesses II and Seti I. But knowing the era was only the first step. The next and more delicate task was to discover the identity of the tomb's owner, who had been laid to rest here, surrounded by servants of clay and prayers written in ink. Egyptologists scoured the inscriptions, searching for what is known as a cartouche, the oval frame that enclosed royal names. None appeared. This was not a pharaoh. Instead, the hieroglyphs on the coffins and papyri offered personal names and titles. On one coffin, carefully painted in red ink, appeared a series of glyphs that read as Tehemwiah. Further analysis identified his title as Chief of the Treasury of the Pharaoh Ramesses II. The implications were profound. The treasury was not a minor office. To control the wealth of the pharaoh was to hold immense influence. This person was not only wealthy himself, but also trusted by one of the most powerful rulers in Egyptian history. Ramesses II, remembered as the builder of temples and the victor of Kadesh, ruled for more than 60 years. To serve him directly placed Tehemwiya among the highest elite. Other inscriptions echoed his status. References to offerings to Osiris on behalf of the overseer of the treasury confirmed the tomb's owner. In Egyptian belief, titles were not decoration, they were identity itself. To name someone in the afterlife was to ensure their soul endured forever. And so, every inscription here carried the weight of memory. But who exactly was Tehemwiya? Outside this tomb, fragments of historical records also mention his name. In temple inscriptions, the treasury overseer appears as an official responsible for supplies, tribute, and temple wealth. He was a man who moved in the shadow of kings, ensuring the flow of gold, grain, and foreign gifts into the pharaoh's coffers. That knowledge reshaped the meaning of the chamber. The lavishness of the coffins, the rows of ushabti, the carefully written papyri, none of this was random. It was the burial of a man who embodied the machinery of the state, a figure who held the purse strings of empire. Placing this discovery in context, archaeologists turned to the landscape of Saqqara itself. For this was not just any necropolis, it was one of Egypt's most sacred grounds. From the Old Kingdom onward, Saqqara was home to the step pyramid of Djoser, the earliest monumental stone pyramid in the world. Around it sprawled centuries of tombs, from mastabas of nobles to vast burial shafts of priests and officials. This particular tomb lay close to other recently unearthed burials from the same period. Not far away, archaeologists had uncovered the tomb of another high-ranking official, a general who served under Ramesses. Others nearby belonged to scribes, priests, and court administrators. Together they painted a picture of Saqqara during the New Kingdom, not a forgotten desert, but a bustling center of elite burials. A place where the powerful sought to rest eternally near Memphis, Egypt's ancient capital. Saqqara's role had evolved through history. In the Old Kingdom, it was the ground of pharaohs and their courts. In the Middle Kingdom, it was revived as a center for officials. And in the New Kingdom, though Thebes had become the political and spiritual capital, Memphis and Saqqara retained importance as a northern counterpart. Officials like Tehemwiya chose to be buried here to remain tied to Memphis and to the traditions of the early kings. The tomb, therefore, was not an isolated chamber, it was part of a network of memory. Each coffin, each amulet, each inscription whispered of a society in which rank, duty, and piety intertwined. Tehemwiya's titles told us he was no mere administrator, he was a guardian of Egypt's wealth, a bridge between the pharaoh's court and the temples that anchored Egyptian religion. And in this way, the puzzle of the tomb was solved piece by piece. The art spoke of a time, the inscriptions spoke of a man. The site spoke of a society that placed him among the great. Yet mysteries remain. Was Tehemwiya's family buried here as well? Did the other coffins represent wives, children, or attendants? What documents might still lie hidden within the sealed box, waiting to be opened? Archaeology is never final. Each answer opens new questions. But already, this chamber has transformed from an anonymous void into a space with voice, identity, and meaning. For the modern world, discoveries like this remind us that history is not written in stone alone. It is written in the hands of scribes, in the pigments of painters, in the prayers of those who hoped for eternity. To decode these signs is to resurrect not only one man, but an entire moment in time. And so, the investigation has revealed the tomb of Tehemwiya, chief of the treasury under Ramesses II. A man who lived in the golden age of the New Kingdom. A man who walked the halls of power, commanded resources, and prepared for a life everlasting beneath the sands of Saqqara. His name, once silent, now speaks again. Every tomb discovered in Saqqara is more than stone and sand. It is a voice from the past, a whisper across millennia, reminding us that history is not complete but a puzzle still waiting for pieces to fall into place. This chamber, with its coffins, papyri, and artifacts, does not rewrite Egyptian history outright, but it enriches it, deepens it. Each new discovery is a chapter we didn't know we were missing. Each coffin is a page, each artifact a line of poetry from a vanished age. For decades, scholars have debated how much we truly understand about burial customs in the New Kingdom. This tomb offers confirmation of known traditions like the use of ushabti figures, the placement of magical amulets, and the painting of protective deities on coffins. But it also raises questions that challenge us to look again. Why were so many coffins placed here together? Were they a family group or a collection of individuals tied by service and rank? Do the papyri preserve prayers we have never read before? Could some of the pigments or materials reveal trade connections stretching far beyond Egypt's borders? Perhaps to the Sinai, the Levant, or even deeper into Africa. Each answer sharpens the image of daily life and death in ancient Egypt. Each question opens a new horizon for exploration. This is why archaeology is never only about the past, it is about the future of knowledge. And then there is Saqqara itself. This vast necropolis is not finished speaking to us. Far from it. Every excavation uncovers shafts upon shafts, chambers upon chambers, tombs upon tombs, layered across centuries, woven together like a library of stone. Recent advances in technology now allow us to peer beneath the surface without lifting a single grain of sand. Ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and 3D scanning are mapping what lies hidden, revealing outlines of walls, shafts, and voids. Thousands of structures may still rest untouched beneath the dunes. Imagine what secrets remain. Entire tombs of priests, generals, scribes, and artisans. Storerooms of offerings and papyri. Temples or chapels we have yet to see. Perhaps even connections between dynasties that no record has yet explained. Saqqara is not a single site, it is an ancient city of the dead, as vast and complex as the living city of Memphis it once served. What this latest discovery shows is that Saqqara is still a gold mine not only of artifacts but of stories. It reminds us that Egypt was not built solely by kings but by officials, workers, artists, and priests whose lives mattered deeply in their time. For every Ramesses II, there was a Tehemwiah ensuring the machinery of empire functioned. For every pharaoh's monument, there were thousands of personal tombs, each with a human voice inside. So, why does this matter? Because history is not just about rulers, it is about people. Because the sands of Egypt are not exhausted, they are alive with memory. And because each discovery brings us closer to understanding how one of the greatest civilizations of old time viewed life, death, and eternity. Standing at Saqqara today, you feel the weight of silence. But that silence is deceptive. Beneath the sand, thousands of untold stories are waiting for light, waiting for us to listen. And so we end here. Not with closure, but with an open question. Saqqara has revealed yet another secret, but thousands of tombs remain sealed, silent, untouched. What do you think the sands will give us next? Another great official's tomb, a cache of forgotten papyri, or perhaps something so unexpected it forces us to rethink everything we know about ancient Egypt. Tell us what you imagine lies waiting beneath the desert, because the story of Saqqara is far from over, and you are now part of that story too.